right, wonderful. Well, that's really helpful to hear that. I say now that I really enjoy.
Hi, George.
I am interested in that as well. Yeah, can I
Hi, welcome, Adrian. Welcome, Kathleen.
Hello.
Hey, Adrian.
Hello.
Hi, we can't see you yet, but I can hear you.
Yeah,
okay, now I can
just
see you.
enabled the video.
Great. Hi, Kathleen. Welcome. I see and hear you very well. Great.
Fine.
George, can you hear us?
Yes, I am online. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you for being available and timely. We're still expecting a few people to join. So let's take a moment to just center. And while we do that, we'll let people join. If you have a meditation practice, you can just meditate a little bit. And if you don't and just want to connect with your breath or just with your senses, and land here with us. You know, Bernie spoke often about his work as a cook, and about his work as an entrepreneur, as being a cook. And, I'm thinking about the cook of just what my senses are just picking up, and what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling, and the weight of my body on the chair. And, and how's that can be a good starting point for taking action. Yeah, this is so much what our group and meeting is about, how we move forward and how we create things out of nothing. And it all starts from just what are we bearing witness to. So, tenses in the body, or energies that are open and moving, feelings. Hi Joshua, welcome. We're just taking a moment of silence a bit to center, and as we become more people. And there's something that I learned to appreciate with in this entrepreneur's work, in terms of creating something out of nothing, is this recognitions of sparks of intention and of energy, and following on them, and how much just by sitting, just by meditating quietly, we can actually attune to those sparks in our bodies, and the entrepreneurial project of raising my arm, where that first impulse rises in my consciousness and moves to an actual movement. The impulse is to speak, the impulse is to see, the impulse is to connect. And holding those impulses, and when is it time to act on them, and when is it time to keep noticing them and bearing witness to the nuances of those impulses until they come to fruition in actual action. So as we're sitting quietly and maybe moving into our more connected conversation, I would like to just invoke Bernie, our founder, who was a social entrepreneur and working with these energies of listening and paying attention to needs and the sparks of creativity and acting on them. So I want to invoke him and bring a sense of gratitude to that. And maybe let's take another breath, and if your eyes are still closed, you can open them and just welcome with your gaze, everyone. And I'm very grateful to have all of you. Again, on this call, we may still have some people join, but we will just continue. And I think all of you have been in one form or another on cluster meetings or consoles or the previous entrepreneurs calls. So I wouldn't make a whole introduction in terms of what the overarching purpose of this meeting, but maybe for people who will be hearing the recording of this, I'll just say that I mentioned Bernie Glassman, our founder, who coined these three tenets that were really his distillation of his teachings for decades, not knowing, bearing witness, and taking action. And he really used those as the basis of his social enterprise. He created a huge mandala of support in Yonkers, supporting homeless people and people who are with AIDS. He created bearing witness retreats and really started a whole movement of these bearing witness practices all over the world. And here we are. This is another expression of these teachings. And these cluster meetings are really just ways for our meetings to come together, for our members to come together, meet each other. The entrepreneurs group also have a dedicated room on the membership platform, and these meetings are kind of like the oil that kind of like oils the conversations, and then there's a wonderful continuation of these conversations on the group. So everybody's welcome to that. So welcome, Kiva. We can I can't see or hear you yet, but you're welcome to also just join and just listen in as much as you want. So this meeting, we will what we'll do, we'll have about a little less than an hour and a half. We'll just start, first of all, just opening the floor for a little bit of introductions, just checking in how you are just in this moment. And then we'll move on to a little bit of some topics that I had, and then I'm really just interested to just open it up. So Um, some of our cluster meetings are structured in a council format. This will not necessarily be a council format, but the guidelines are always wonderful to keep. We encourage people to speak from the heart, from their own experience. We all know a lot of things and know of a lot of other people's experiences. And it's in this meeting, I really encourage us just to speak from our experience. There's no need to rehearse what we want to say. Really just trust the moment. Trust that everything that you need in this moment is available to you. Be lean in ways that you communicate. Doesn't mean that you need to be short, but a good way to maybe slow down or even pause to come to really the essence of what you want to say. And it may take a moment. So we can always come back to the silence also. The silence of the meditation that we started with is always available for us. Great. So even before we go into ideas, discussions, let's just do a quick check-in. Let's bring everybody's voices into the meeting. Just hear really just how you are as a human experience in this reality right now. So if you feel called to check in or share, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Yeah. George, go ahead.
Good morning, fellow entrepreneurs. I'm doing well. Glad to be here. And just yesterday, I received the March issue of Lion's Roar magazine. And there's approximately 8 pages dedicated to Rashi Bernie Glassman. There's a wonderful remembrance of his life. And the pictures that are included are equally meaningful. So I did not see it on the web yet, but I just wanted to bring this. It was written by Andrea Miller, and she did a tremendous job. And I think, I'd like to ask Rami, there's a picture of Bernie and other folks doing a homeless retreat by a bench, on a bench. And is that you lying there smiling next to Bernie? Thank you.
Thanks. That would not be me. I joined Bernie after he stopped going on the streets. So I'll be curious to see who that is. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Joshua, please.
Hey, Rami, how you doing, guys? Just checking in. I'm doing well. Really looking forward to this meeting. I was at the last entrepreneurial meeting, and but I missed the Zen Peacemakers member meeting, which I signed up for, but I couldn't make it. So, but I'm just really glad to be here, to be around you folks, and I can't wait to pick up that issue of Lion's Roar magazine. That sounds really good. But I've been doing really well, getting the entrepreneur juices in a wheel, I guess.
Nice. And can you also say where you're calling from, Joshua and George?
Amsterdam, New York.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Great. So New York State and Arizona in the United States. Great. Yeah, Kathleen.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Kathleen, and despite my name, I'm calling from Germany, from Bonn. I'm here for the first time. I missed the last meeting, but I'm looking forward to share with you. And of course, I have been inspired to join the Peacemakers because of Bernie's impulse to not separate the economic and the entrepreneurial spirit from the spiritual practice. And that's what I really liked, among other things, which inspired me a lot. Fine, that's great to be here. And Joshua, you're having another chance for the open meeting on February 2nd, on Saturday. There's another one, you know. Okay. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kathleen.
Yeah, and may I ask, because there are some, I don't know who it is, there were a lot of sound in the background and people speaking, and so maybe again let's mute the microphones when we're not speaking. That's just helpful for
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. So if you're not speaking, you can mute yourself. I can also do that for you, and so if you'd like to at any point during the call, we would like to speak, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Great, thanks. Adrian.
Yes, I'm calling in from Malaga, Spain. Actually, I met Kathleen over Barbara's Zen house in Spiegel in Bern, Switzerland. Now I moved back to Spain, so I'm no longer going there regularly. And I was there at the first meeting we had with the entrepreneur cluster, but I haven't joined any of the other online meetings. I've been in council there in the Zen house from Barbara and Roland in Switzerland. And I'm curious and excited to see what this group brings and what the discussion is. This is a totally new format for me, and it's also interesting for me to see what can evolve from this space of consciousness.
Great, thank you, Adrian. So I want to thank, I think both George and Adrian were on the previous meeting, and I really appreciate both of yours also participation on the group, on the platform. And there was some interesting shares of resources of some videos, and I watched them, and I had three main things kind of came up to me, and I thought, we can just put it out there that I thought would be interesting to talk about. And then we can also see if there's other things that come up. But maybe this is just kind of like to jumpstart. So one person made a comment around, being as the entrepreneurial energy is about following and creating something new, and moving to new territories and new fields and developing things from scratch and bringing things into the world. And somebody commented, and I found it really interesting, that they said that sometimes they find it either as useful or even more useful to simply connect to an existing proven concept or an existing project. So instead of creating a parallel or in business or marketing, it could be a competitive channel, like bringing the resources together, which is interesting. There's something with the entrepreneurial state of mind when I think about it. It's very kind of like a lone wolf, kind of like do things, on your own terms. And there's something about the regrouping and doing things together. And I'm very interested in that. A big part of my work in terms of how I work with so many groups and so many members is so much to do with this and how we come together, and how we find commonality, how much language is important in this. So this is something that I found very interesting also to hear from your experiences. we can talk about that. Another thing that I thought is just around, as when we look at this is from practice point of view, in terms, when I say practice, I mean a place of self-inquiry. So there's the action that we're promoting out in the world, we're creating projects, we're creating strategies, but there's also based on our self-inquiry. And I'm curious what shadows can rise, particularly to us as entrepreneurs. I kind of touched on it a little bit before. I spoke about the lone wolf, right? So there's part of me that would really just love to do things on my own, not have to answer anyone, find my own sources and run with things. That can be both very exciting and fulfilling, and it can also be a shadow for me because it may actually pull on parts of me that just don't want to collaborate and don't want to partner and be generous in that way. There's a writer from he's a Vipassana practitioner, but he's an amazing writer. His name is Paul Fleischman, and he wrote a book called Wonder, and he writes there about how his seeing the world is that the universe is a collaboratory entity, that the whole universe is constantly collaborating with itself. So what parts of me are resonate with this and what shadows in me are not. So I think these are really interesting, just more from the self-inquiry piece to look at. So, we can pick that up as a subject of conversation. And the other things that came up were Adrian posted, he mentioned a business book that he wrote, and he said it may relate to the Three Tenets. Maybe you would like to speak about that. And he had some project about behavior on social media. We can hear about that. And the video that he posted was really interesting. Thanks, Adrian, for posting that, about a person who set up coding programming school for refugees in Switzerland. And the person who spoke on the video really ended it with just saying, start from small steps, what skills we have that we can share with others and make them feel empowered. And I thought it's a nice way to also just consider the small steps. A lot of times I have a lot of big ideas, and I'm thinking, what can contribute to small steps. So I touched on a lot of things. I touched on starting something new or connecting with a proven concept. I spoke about the shadows. I spoke about Adrian's projects and book, and about little steps and skills we can share with others. So I'm just curious, just putting all of these different pieces together. Maybe let's take a moment, just connect again with our bodies, see how our mind is stimulated, in what direction. And if you want to share, just raise your hand, I'll call on you. And let's just kind of continue with one subject at a time. And so I wouldn't necessarily want to jump from one thing to another. It would be nice to kind of let that energy work itself. So if somebody brings up a subject, and let's try to respond to that subject. And if we feel that we have something else to say, let's just frame that and maybe ask if it's a good time to turn the conversation to a different direction, just so we can stay and really explore a subject thoroughly. Great. I saw Joshua. Yeah.
So Remy and my fellows here, I went to a local church and asked if I could rent a space out for a group meditation, an interfaith mindful meditation group. Because we've all probably experienced, it's much nicer. It's great to meditate in groups. It's so much more peaceful, powerful, that kind of thing. And so I wanted to touch on your 3 points, but also some of the hurdles. It's not necessarily a shadow, but the pastor wanted me to get an insurance policy I'm not a homeowner, so I can't get a rider for any liabilities or anything like that. So I called an insurance provider, and just some of the, like, not roadblocks, but learning curve as a new person in this realm, you know. And so I'm calling. I have insurance people calling me, and I might have like an insurance, like a small little liability insurance thing I can have, so I can actually have this group meditation once a week on a Friday for an hour. And that's something that I didn't think that was going to come up, but it's kind of exciting because it kind of unfolded a bunch of steps that I have to do. Like even something as simple as wanting to lead a group meditation someplace, there's some obstacles that kind of come up that you have to actually embrace if you want to do it, at least here in New York. And from the meditation group class that I want to offer, it's I just wanted to be a facilitator, and then I started writing down almost like a mission statement and different kinds of things like that. So it's kind of pretty cool, actually. And but I'm coming from with what I want to offer, I guess, is coming from almost like an addiction recovery kind of model. And when that comes up, meditation can help people out with so many kind of like, you come up with different like 12-step programs and different kinds of stuff like that. So I've been really concentrating on just keeping it interfaith kind of thing, and then the steps to actually have this come to fruition. And any shadows that come up in a kind of thing have to do with boundaries between me and my fellows. Psychosexual boundaries when it comes to leading a group in a meditation group, because I really haven't done that before. The trust that you have between your fellows, and also the people that are lending, or the space that you're renting out, that kind of thing, as far as a group meditation. And and of course, this brings it up to like how to advertise, or like a social media kind of thing, whether I should put it on a meetup kind of thing or different kinds of things. And also, most of this money's coming from out of my pocket, but I'm going to be asking for donations with it. So that would bring a shadow into that kind of thing too. As the nice lady Kathleen was saying about how Bernie brought up these things, his creation with different kinds of stuff. It was interdependent, but he also came from a philosophy where he's not separating the entrepreneur spirit from the actual spirituality or the service that you want to offer. So, but right now, I don't even know what kind of money they're going to be quoting me. Hopefully it'll be under $50 a month about the general liability insurance. But the pastor really wanted that at this place. Even though it's going to be an interfaith, it's not affiliated with their church or anything like that. It's just more of a liability issue. So, obviously there's fear with that, but not that much. But, there's different kinds of things that can always come up. So that's where I'm at right now.
Thanks, Joshua. First, I just want to appreciate Joshua's just in terms of sharing what you're working on and kind of the efforts that you're putting into it. And another function for this call, I mean, I kind of gave some possibilities of what we can talk about, but another function for this call is exactly for us as people who are in process of generating things, to just share and connect with others with our experience. So I really appreciate you just kind of like finding support, and I hope you find support in this group. I also want to invite us as listeners, when we listen to somebody like Joshua speak about these things, and because we have so much experience and we have the impulse to do and support. Let's keep our maybe advice or our own experience and many ideas that we can give Joshua now. Let's keep it for ourselves. And if Joshua had asked us for advice or what do I do, or then we can speak to that. And if you really think there's something you want to share, just ask for consent before that. What it does, it just keeps the energy of the conversation personal and less didactic. So let's just continue with this. And again, if there's an idea, like something really burning and you think, wow, this could really work for this person, just ask if this will be appropriate to do now. So again, and if some of you have practiced counsel before, this is where this is not a counsel, but we are trying to kind of hold that energy a bit in terms of support and in terms of the frequency of the listening. So we're not jumping to fix things, right? It's a big piece of counsel. Great. So me saying this, Joshua, I'm curious, is there anything from what you said that you'd like feedback on, or you just appreciated just being heard?
Well, I've never been in this is only my second meeting. It's anything like this. So I don't really, I don't know what to say off the bat or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just might as well just start for myself and just tell you where I'm at with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think I would imagine one of the things that you and us as a group want is to create something, I guess, to bring service to other people. And, I came up with this idea with like a group meditation because it's, I hate meditating by myself, and I'd rather experience light and creativity with others, So, so it's just, it's something that I wanted to start. So if I'm out of bounds with anything, please let me know, but I've never been in any affiliated with anything like this before. So
Great. No, all good, and that's why I just want to make sure that we're supporting you in your endeavors. That's great. I think you touched on a lot of important things: trust building, shadows of money, leadership. You mentioned, working with the dynamics of leading, men and women and people on the spectrum, risk. So these are things that I think all of us can relate to. Yeah. I think I remember seeing another hand up. George, yeah.
Thank you, Rami, and thank you for the perspective. I wanted to share that many states have what's called Organization of Retired Executives. So the state of New York may have such a resource, the New York Organization of Retired Executives. And these are people like myself that are more than happy to provide answers to questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, George. So I'm hearing that you're offering mentorship or just advice or just answering from your experience as an executive. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, at this moment, I'm being careful not to offer advice, but to instead offer encouragement and praise to Joshua for what he's done. And in fact, I'm kind of putting it on the back of a theoretical New York group. And so not so much myself. I also like to say, as I was listening to Joshua talk about the many things he wants to accomplish, that the internet is a wonderful place to learn, and e-bookstore. Thank you for letting me share that.
Thanks, George. Thank you, George. Adrian.
Yes, so I wanted to pick up on this concept of the shadow, which the word resonated strongly. The shadow. Where's the shadow, right? So I guess it's part of the exercise as well, to see what it awakens, what it rises in us. And I've been reading a lot about entrepreneurial in the latest times, and part of it is the book I wanted to comment about. Maybe we can do that later. Is that as entrepreneurs, you have to be competent, not necessarily a master, but you have to be competent at a big number of skills, because you need to do outreach, you need to do bookkeeping, you need to do accounting, maybe you need to do your core skill, whatever it is you're doing. You have to manage relationships, and you have to be very versatile. And again, you don't need to be an expert in everything, but a common pitfall is that you can very easily get overwhelmed, and you can very easily be paralyzed by decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is the key term that in the literature they use to say when you are deciding critical stuff for the project on a daily basis, nonstop, with the information you have available. And there's a lot at stake in every one of those decisions. So it's very stressful for a body and for the mind to be in such a state constantly. That's one of the shadows I can see for anybody starting a new project, is decision fatigue and this need to be competent and a broad range of skills. And attached to that, there is the concept of imposter syndrome, which is also what people get when they don't, their confidence fails them. So you're trying to pitch your project to somebody, and then halfway through, you kind of feel inside, this is not going so well. I was never meant to be the marketing guy, blah, blah, blah. You know, you have this dialogue, this program running in your head. So these are two shadows that I can identify very clearly. One is the decision fatigue, and the other one is the imposter syndrome. So I think my approach to that so far is that I try to be aware. I just try to notice that, okay, it's happening. I try not to let it sweep over me. At the same time, I try not to deny it. But I think it's a tremendous work. So it's something that it belongs to that effort of creating something out of nothing, like you were saying, Rami. So it's just part of the game, and so it's a shadow. It's part of what it takes, but it's very interesting to see how it moves the stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, very rich, very rich. And so I heard you speak about the need for versatility and the risk of overwhelm, and use the term decision fatigue, and the imposter syndrome. And I thought interesting that those last two are really shadows, because we don't want to. Well, when I experience them, I usually don't want to acknowledge them, because it's kind of shameful, right? I need to be in my game, right? I need to be like 500%. It's like, I got this, right? So it's in the shadow. That's why it's a shadow. And I really love that you touched this. I definitely work with, especially these last two, making a lot of decisions for, part of my role and this role. And also all of these have a lot of relational and relationship effects. And that is also part of the, the consideration and the fatigue of considering relationships. I think that's also interesting, that decisions are not necessarily just financial, whether I should spend $100,000 here or there, but it's also the fatigue of working with a lot of human moving parts. And I found personally for me that's been a challenge to work with. And then at some point I'm kind of like my decision fatigue like overwhelms, and then it's like I'm done. I can't make any more decisions. And I'm also looking at possibly a move. I live in Massachusetts. I'm looking at moving back to New York, so I'm looking at apartments and banks. It's like I cannot make another decision. So I can so much relate to this. And the imposter syndrome, I think, is I remember just last time I was in London. I was doing some pitch, and I remember the moment where in my pitch, like my voice cracked, and I was like, that kicked in. And somebody later gave me like feedback. She said, like, dude, you totally lost your mojo at that moment. And I was like, yeah, but it's so important. Like you said, I heard you say that you work with it by awareness and just acknowledging that. So I love that you brought that into the conversation. I'm very curious to hear people's experiences, how you work with it, or even just share stories of like, when was it that you experienced that? Part of the support that is offered in this meeting is that we kind of share our challenges as people on the same path. So that's an invitation. Yeah. Thanks, Adrian. Yeah.
So Remy.
Yeah.
So imposter syndrome, I mean, that's like my middle name sometimes. So thanks for bringing that up, Adrian. It's true. I hope you didn't see through me or anything like that. But I do claim a victory, because talking to the insurance agents and even going through these steps where I'd normally be kind of like a basket case, it went really smooth. And compared to where I was 3-4 years ago, if I wanted to start something like this, well, I've never really made the first steps to start something like this. But I didn't have any imposter syndrome talking to the pastor or talking to the insurance people, where it kind of flew kind of naturally. And I actually had to come up with a name of a business real quick. So at the top of my head, I called it Bright Horizons. So, but I know there's like a counterbalance to like the world, or the secular, not the secular, but the world and the world's dynamics. And, but I didn't really fold talking to the insurance people or the pastor. And I know sitting down with somebody that doesn't know anything about meditation, I know I could help them out as well as help out myself at the same time. I mean, I did used to teach. I'm a black belt in a Okinawa farm of karate, and because I've had my black belt since 1999, I had to teach kids and adults along with the class where I used to train. So I'm not really that uncomfortable with it. I won't be teaching it. I'm not going to be teaching any kids, that's for sure. Just because it's just, I used to substitute teach, and I did that part-time, and I'll never do it again. But maybe, I'm a good father and stuff. Maybe down the line I could maybe do something like that, but that isn't even in my realm right now. So it'd be just adults, and it also has a lot to do with providence too, where I'm just throwing stuff out to the wind, because I kind of like that aspect of it, just to see what happens, because I'm not investing a whole lot of money into this kind of thing. And but I'm really glad you brought up the imposter syndrome, and I've never really heard that at all before. I don't have any fatigue yet or anything like that, but it's a slow process. I mean, since our last meeting was probably a couple months ago, and you know, it took me a couple weeks to send out a mass email to a bunch of different churches that were around for space. So, but yeah, the shadow aspects of this, the spiritual entrepreneurship is a big deal.
Great, thanks, Joshua. I'm curious to check in with Kathleen. I'm just personally, from my relationship with Kathleen, which is both personal and professional. Kathleen has been coordinating the council meetings for Zen Peacemakers International for the past year, and she's also an artist, and has a lot of hands in this and a lot of things. So I'm curious if if you'd like to share anything about what we're speaking about.
Yeah, okay, thank you. There's a lot of hands in a lot of things, yeah, that's true. I think this syndrome also has some name. You have too many hands in too many things, but I don't know. Maybe Adrian knows that, a professional name for that. Yeah, I'm listening, and there's a lot of things passing through my mind while listening, and I wonder at which point I should relate or start to relate. I was touched by that Joshua started with his everyday entrepreneurship, which is totally new now, just to start this group, which comes from his, as I understood, you, Joshua, which came from your your decision to start a meditation group and then see what happens and what players come in and just to and that's how I understood what you, Rami, said in the very beginning. So start something new and or give something you want to do a new form, or try to give it a new form, and then you start to make one step after the other, and things happen, and then you'll see with which kind of personality and parts of your personality you react to it. And the shadows and also the potentials come in, and of course I can easily relate to that. I definitely know that that have this experience too, that I'm also rather and surrounded by people and working with a lot of people and groups, and but what came to my mind when I listened to you sharing on that syndrome is that in the last couple of, I don't know how to say, months or years, I have to say that this, if I got you right, this experience of being in situations where you're exposed to people who listen to you or watch you, or have a wait something for you to do something, and then you suddenly have the feeling it doesn't work, or it's wrong. Or did I get that right? Is that the syndrome where you suddenly kind of break and don't know how to go on, or feel insecure, or so? If I got that, that's of course something I also know well, and it happens to me in the last period of time. Yeah, more in the spiritual practice, when I do counsel or work with groups and offer meditation or offer workshops to kind of work on mindfulness, or to get in touch with your mindfulness. Then there arise moments where suddenly this is, I'm not doing it in a way that people really can kind of open into it, or am I too? Is that too ambitious in a way? Is that not simple enough? So what I think about is that I wonder that entrepreneurship for example, in the US culture is maybe something very different from European or at least German culture, where entrepreneurship is kind of an opposite, an alternative concept to economy in a way. So we have some figures here, also writers like Faltin, that's a professor here from Berlin, who explored entrepreneurship, and he says it's more like art, it's more like overcoming capitalism in a way. So that's also a question about how to deal with the economy as it is, as we learn, as we experience it as a capitalistic kind of culture, and that entrepreneurship should be kind of different, at least social entrepreneurship, and that this is what I was kind of wondering now how to deal with that, especially as you also brought up that shadow or difficulty thing with money and asking for money in this context of meditation or mindfulness and all this. The concept of dana, where usually if you teach something or offer something, you shouldn't ask money for it. So that's a tension also for us to, in terms of earning our living by what we do or what we want to do from our hearts. So these are some thoughts. There are some more, but I don't want to be too long. Thanks for asking.
Wonderful, Kathleen. I want to thank you for bringing up the cultural aspect of our language. And I realize, I'm using the words entrepreneurship, and we're in circulating invitation for these meetings, and I'm realizing I'm using an English word. In German, it's probably different. Adrian may be using a different word, and and it's another place for me where I'm saying that I in a way took it for granted. So I was acting from a place of knowing, as if everybody is on the same page as I am. So I appreciate you, Kathleen, just kind of like pulling that rug under me. I'm actually curious about what are your cultural senses of what entrepreneurship is. When I'm saying it in English, even what is the word that you use in your daily language, and what connotations it brings when you use that word. And in a way, I'm kind of like asking, like, what is the kind of the conditioned or the habitual way that we talk when we say that word, what it means. But it really will give us access to how our different cultures relate to it. And that's it's something that I learned, particularly in our meetings, because they're so multinational, just by listening how another person speak about something that we think we know about something, but they speak about it in different language, sometimes completely shifts things. So I really appreciate Kathleen just bringing that point up. So I can say from my experience, my mother tongue is Hebrew, right? I grew up in Israel. So our word in Hebrew is yazamut. Yazamut. A person is yazam. And when I'm thinking about that word, what does yazamut mean? It comes from the word yozma. It's the same root. That's how we constructed the words in Hebrew. And yozma can translate in English to initiative. I have an initiative, therefore I am a yazam, and therefore I am an entrepreneur. So there's something about the initiating things, creating, starting something. And when I try to just think about what are the characteristics of this yazamut, there's a lot of energy. There's a momentum. There's an outgoing ability to connect and make connection. There's something sexy about it, right? It's like something like, I'm thinking about, you know, what role models I had for Yazamut. They weren't sexy that they were, you know, all James Bond, but there was a sense of groundedness that I really appreciated from the Israeli entrepreneurs that I know, that they have this sense of, I got this and I'm going to make this work. So there's a sense of faith there, but also a sense of trust in the ability. So it's kind of like what Adrian was saying. So it could be that it kind of falls under the mask of the shadow, right? But that's kind of like what the cultural thing that I grew up with. And that obviously informs the shadow. So in a way, I'm asking us, like, how does this come up in our own language, and may give us even more input into how it manifests in our shadow. I'm curious if other people want to speak about that. Yeah, George.
Thank you, Rami. Perhaps the original language was German, but Karl Marx, I believe, defined what we're discussing in 2 words in English: species, being. Species, being. That as a member of the human species, we are doing what we find most fulfilling. So with Adrian, when he writes or speaks about the coder group, or when Joshua speaks about his meditation group, and myself in my own pursuits, and Kathleen in hers, and you in yours, I would like to hypothesize that we are able to pursue activities that we find fulfilling. And it's the very opposite of drudgery. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Yeah.
Yeah, you're great. Yeah.
Please, Kathleen.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And of course, I also like that that the word entrepreneurship is partly French, of course. Entrepreneurship. That's also wonderful. It's to start doing something that's in the word, in the linguistics, so to say, or in the semantics of the word. Undertaking something, starting action. But for me, what is very important, and that's part of the German perspective on entrepreneurship, is that the sense of the early sense of or the possibility, the antennas to sense what's necessary, where's the what's missing, and that the entrepreneur can go in there and can see that, can sense that, and can sense a solution or a possible solution, and then you take the action. But this is before. So there's a sense for problems and solutions. And maybe this is the only legitimation that I have to be here or to in any way call myself an entrepreneur, because I think I have a sense for an early sense for what's needed, or what might be necessary, and where we could go to find a solution for that, or what could be the first step or so. And so this is part of course, of the German culture is also, it is mind bound, has a focus on the mind and on thinking and on responsibility. So here, I think social entrepreneurship is a big issue in Germany. So how to find solutions, economic and effective solutions for social or societal problems. This is the question that entrepreneurs pose here and are going for. And there's a wonderful new initiative called We Economy. So that's something I relate to what Rami said in the beginning, this tension between, the entrepreneur is like the artist, he's the genius and he has the ideas and you just go and do it. And it's just unnerving that everybody wants to co-decide or decide together with you. So this as part of the shadow. And also the longing for doing things together and to co-create and to co-decide. And so this initiative here in Germany called We Economy, so the we and the economy bring it together and offer spaces for shared economy and to bring people who want to find economic solutions for social problems, to bring them together. And this is wonderful. And I'm starting, or Thomas and me, my husband and me, we are really thinking about, even though we're both, he's a philosopher, I'm a language person and a writer, and still we're thinking of or trying to start an entrepreneurship to create something for people getting old. Now, we're all getting old, I know, sooner or later, but for people who dedicated their life more to ethical and maybe even spiritual pathways, and thus maybe just missed to create a good financial background and find a solution for that, because there are many people, and I really think we all have. For me, it's very important to create a possibility so that these people have a have dignity in their age and don't have to be totally, I don't know, poor or forgotten or something. So this is a social problem or a societal problem, and we want to create a solution for it. And we don't the hell know how and where to go, but we know that we want to do it. And so we're at that point. We haven't started, but we will. So we have started in our minds and our hearts, especially. That's even more important. So that's the pathway. Thank you for listening, and you're my witness too. I when I was in Barbara's retreat in October, I also asked the whole group to witness the idea. I feel pretty vulnerable with it because I really can't present anything yet. It's just that I feel the need to find a solution for this task. And so I start with kind of collecting witnesses who kind of in their mind support the idea or the longing. Yeah.
Thank you, Kathleen. I actually want to pause a bit just with that word that you brought up, which is the longing. It's not often a word that I hear in the context of strategies and entrepreneurship, and I feel it kind of drops me straight into essence, right? Like, what am I longing for? And I think George was mentioning before, longing for fulfillment. And I heard you mention, just care and dignity, and however strategies I'm going to find to do this, in this enterprise or that enterprise, but really it's kind of all based on this longing. I think this is such an important piece to remember for me, because I can lose myself as I'm planning and as I'm making decisions, that's exactly where the decision fatigue comes in and where the imposter comes in, because I forget the longing, really like what my heart wants without all of the other stuff. And I listened to a talk by a rabbi, Reb Zalman Schachter, who's a friend of Bernie's. And he was saying, you know, the longing is the whole spiritual work. Just stay with the longing. What is your heart longing for? It will move you through the basic needs of security, safety, community, into God. That's how he was talking about it, but that's where the longing goes. So I really appreciate that word being invoked here. And I heard also Kathleen saying about the sensitivity, that skill of the entrepreneur, the sensitivity to look around and see what's needed. And I'm thinking this is so much really what Bernie was talking about when we're bearing witness, right? This is all about not necessarily know how to do things or how to fulfill these needs, but just bear witness and be sensitive. Yeah, so thank you. Adrian.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to touch on a couple things. The first is the words. You were talking about the root of the word entrepreneurial, what it looks like in our languages. I gotta say, I'm fascinated by the power of words. And having lived for almost a decade away from my homeland, of course, I kept speaking Spanish regularly on a daily basis. My wife is Spanish as well. But it kept me away from the Spanish language for a long time. And I'm coming back, and I'm so in love with the language. And it's so profound. It has so much capacity that it almost brings tears to my eyes. Really is such a treasure of mankind, the Spanish language. And I guess any language that you can go deep into, it opens up expressivity to a broad range. And Spanish for sure is a very expressive language. So yeah, the power of words is amazing. And I was actually looking for the actual translation for entrepreneur, because there are two words that come to mind, and both of them are radically different for me in the way I perceive these words. One of them is empresario, which comes from empresa. It literally means the person who owns a company. That's the official translation I just looked at. And that brings ideas of the factory boss that exploits the workers. You know, that same word just brings this imagery into my head. Of course, it doesn't have to be like that. But having been in student groups and unions and such, it's kind of a demonized word. And there's been so many stories of ruthless empresarios that, you know, it does bring that recollection. And the other word is emprendedor, which comes from emprender, which means the person who kickstarts something. And that's completely different in my mind. When I say emprendedor, I'm thinking of Alexander the Great going on a trip to conquer Asia and culturize the world. That's kind of the feeling that comes to mind. So words do have a strong power. And one conversation I've had a number of times is that of the job description. So I am a software engineer. That's what I tell I am. And some people say programmer, and some people say developer. Each of these words imply different things to me. And in this order, I will expose it just for the sake of amusement, maybe. So programmer is the person who programs, but a computer can program itself. You tell the computer how it can program itself, it can program itself. It's not very creative. A developer is someone who develops. So that brings creativeness into the process. It's somebody who envisions a solution and, you know, implements the solution. That's already better. But on top of that, in my rank, it would be engineer, because engineer means a person who spent a long time studying a subject field and then became certified or somehow got a diploma or a degree that says, hey, now I'm officially vested to carry out this work, this technical work. And some people use these words interchangeably. And in a way, if we are in the same community, it doesn't really matter because we all know what we mean. But it is exactly when we talk to outsiders that I think that may not be so familiar with the nomenclature, with the wording, that I think these words are important because they have power. And also they have power in a way that goes unnoticed. It's subconscious. We don't think about what words mean when we are in a conversation. We just register them, and that's it. So that's why it's so critical to choose the right word. And so I really appreciate that you brought that up, Ram. And the other point I wanted to comment was so Kathleen talked about vulnerability, right? And you said, I feel so vulnerable now that I'm talking about this project and I'm collecting witnesses. And that's a jump of faith the first time you voice your project. Because in a way, now it keeps you accountable. Now you talked about it, and now people know you are after it. So it creates a pressure, and I know that for me it does that. So that's why I think twice and 3 times before I share an idea. Because once I let it out, then I immediately feel, hey, now I have a commitment. I said this now. I mean, it's not like people are gonna be asking for reports and such, but in a way I feel like that. I feel like the moment I voice something, a project, a new idea, watch out, because now I'm being held accountable, maybe by the universe, I don't know. And I was like, I gotta do something about that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Adrian. Thanks for bringing just the perspective from the language point of view, the 2 words from Spanish, in a way the bias that comes with them. And I really appreciate kind of picking up that theme of vulnerability that Kathleen spoke about. Yeah, there's that sense of they're kind of like little children before, like there's just ours, and then when we share them, it's like they're shy, right? Yeah. I'm curious, what do people do? Like, what do you do, Kathleen or Adrian? Like, how do you work with these vulnerable, shy parts when you need to present, just like now? You know, when I think about, you know, my shy parts, you know, there's also, usually they're accompanied with some kind of a judgmental part that says, oh, it's not good enough yet. It's not fully realized yet. It's not there yet. If they hear it, they'll think less of me. So there's a little bit of this, and kind of depending on my moment-to-moment centeredness and really just practice, you know, this can be very present, where I'll be completely frozen and I'll be able to speak. And at times it's completely gone, right? And that part is completely not on my radar. And I can just share something and actually take even criticism without taking a hit, because, you know, it's just an idea that I have. It's not a big deal. I have 100 ideas. It's just this one just coming up now. So when I think about it, there's a sense of like lightness, and when I feel that vulnerability, it's first and foremost my job to listen to my own shy part and say, you know, regardless of these people, I'm hearing you, man. It's a good idea. I don't know if it's valuable, but, you know, but I got you. And let's see what these people are saying. And that kind of gives me a little bit of lightness. And then I can move that. Which is actually a really interesting point, you know, again around shadows, because I think if I haven't met my shy part with that sort of understanding, I'll be really heartbroken if I get bad criticism, right? And if somebody says, bad idea, I'll be heartbroken. So this is again like where the practice is so important of just like, and it's not just the practice of the meditation of the self-awareness of like, wow, I'm having these thoughts, but also just the facility with my own parts. In a way, the way I'm working with this is kind of like being a facilitator of a conversation like this, but in right here. And I have these parts and they're like, oh, I'm feeling really concerned. And it's like, yeah. There's and I think this is for me also where I really bring it back to this being a spiritual practice, where at the end of the day, I hopefully, this is where my faith comes in, and this is my practice is that I try to remember that at the end of the day, it's all good. It's all good. Whether I do it, it's good. Whether I don't do it, good. If I feel vulnerable, it's good. If I don't feel vulnerable, it's good. It's all being held. And there's actually a larger context that I can't know more than this. So it kind of gives me a little bit of release and not having to like grab it. So I'm just sharing my process because I'm dealing with this stuff daily, and I really appreciate just even having this forum now to be witnessed, like Kathleen said, of just like being witnessed in my challenges, because now I'm speaking from my collective place. I feel centered. I'm being witnessed. I feel a lot of empathy from you. Most of the time, I need to work with all this. So I just want to acknowledge that. So thank you. Yeah. I'm seeing George. I'm seeing Joshua. I actually want to take a breath because I feel like I shared a lot and it was vulnerable for me. So just want to, yeah, I hear George. Great. Thanks for hearing me. Joshua, please.
So you were mentioned vulnerability, and I feel vulnerable all the time, and people can pick up on that. But what I wanted to share with you was, I think it was about 6 months or so before Bernie died, and I was listening to one of he still was talking about different things, whether he wrote it on his blog or he did something, you might remember this, but and it really stuck with me when he talked about self-care. And I think you guys, when you come to your councils or on your bearing witness to retreats and different kinds of stuff like that, people talk about self-care a lot. Because you can, at least in my experience, a lot of meditation, it can be somewhat dangerous, and different kinds of things where you can get lost, especially if people suffer from different kind of mental illness, or if you're depressed, or if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, different kinds of things. But Bernie, when he talked about self-care, it really, it stayed with me for a long time. I still think about it every day, and I never really heard about it that much. And so I guess, Rami, what I'm trying to say is I can't stop thinking about, I have to remember self-care and what I can handle and what I can't handle, and also when to back off. And because I know, not necessarily for an entrepreneur kind of thing, because I'm really excited about it. I don't really have any fear with that kind of thing, but especially with, like, the way, as at least in America, the politics nowadays, different political kind of things going on, hate mongering, the new breed of bigotry and white supremacy and populism and stuff like that. I mean, this is all intermingled together, and it's all, and especially with populism, and I know probably Kathleen's experienced a lot of that, and probably even Adrian, and it's and to be a part of something like this, what we're doing, I have to remember that right now we're in like a safe spot, I guess, but out there is like you really have to. The self-care thing is something that I want to learn more about, I guess, because I do get vulnerable in a lot of different kinds of situations. And but when Bernie hit on that self-care thing, because I think he was talking about before he got sick, maybe going to Israel and like, the whole the Israeli and Palestinian conflicts and stuff like that. And it was before his stroke, and he was really jacked up about all that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden he had a stroke, and then, but self-care is a pretty big deal, especially stuff that I think about that concept a lot when it comes to the world I live in, and maybe the world you guys live in too nowadays. So I'll mute my button there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joshua. Absolutely, self-care. And I'm thinking, again, when we talk about entrepreneurship, usually there's that outward going plan, right? Let's like do something. And it's like, this is the first entrepreneurial project for me, right? And each one of us have our own entrepreneurial first project to take care of ourselves. What I'll do after this call, I'm going to post on the Entrepreneurs Room a link to a talk that Genro wrote. If you know him, Genro Gaunt. He's a Roshi, a successor of Bernie, and he's been with us in many Bearing Witness retreats, and he does these street retreats. And if you've been on a street retreat, or if you know about street retreat, those are a week where people go on the street with no resources, with nothing on their back, and just live on the street. And he tells the story of a street retreat that went really bad. And when I mean bad, I don't mean just a judgment call on this. It's just the weather was really hard, and they found themselves completely being soaked and snow and hail, and it was like a whole thing. And how they just realized to quit. They had this very noble intention to like go on the street and do a street retreat, and and he just said no, it's time. Actually, the right thing to do right now is to stop. From self-care point of view, from really just connecting with basic needs, but also the intention, like what are we trying to do? Are we just trying to be soldiers and like get through things? So I think this is a really wonderful kind of teaching to bring to us. I think Kathleen said it before about having too many hands in too many things. Yeah, like what do we stop? When at some point, like what is the place where we say, wow, I actually need to stop and maybe take a break? So thank you for bringing this. I want to take a moment to actually just return a little bit to our bodies and just breathe and kind of bring this conversation to maybe a kind of like a last round in terms of the call. We have about 7 more minutes. So let's just take a breath and recollect the mind and the heart and the excitement of this conversation. I'm definitely feeling it. And I mentioned a few intentions for this call, whether it was support for ourselves as just people on the path, learning, looking at shadows, looking at different aspects of this work. I'm curious if we connect from that place of, the belly of just like where are you at right now and how are you feeling? Is there a wish or intention of what more can be done in these meetings? If there was a particular aspect that worked for you more, in terms of, the conversation was really good, or I just need more support. I want to be heard more in terms of my ideas and my plans. I want to be witnessed. So I'm just giving all kind of ideas or things that may come up for you, because as we're moving this forward, and there is energy in the entrepreneurs group, this particular group has really nice momentum. I'm just curious to pick up on what the community needs in terms of how we can offer this more. So even if it just comes up later, I'm open to just be hearing later over email or. But if something comes up now, I'm curious to hear. Yeah, George.
This meeting was delightful. I felt heard, and I can hope that each of us did. And the multiplicity of things that I would like to share, I'll bring to our room. So thank you for your guidance, and thank everyone else for their participation.
Thank you so much, George. Yeah, and if you just want to take the opportunity to just kind of check in, check out where you're at now, and as we close the meeting, please, you can do that too. Kathleen.
Yes. Okay. Great. Yeah. Yes. I feel. I need to train more English. What is the best word for that? I feel gazed. No, I can't say that. If water has gas, what do you say? Sparkled or something? Yeah. Okay.
Bubbly.
Something like that.
Bubbly.
So. Yeah, maybe. Oh well, that's not. Yeah, bubbly. That sounds. No, that doesn't sound from the sound of the word, not as if it is the right word. So I feel Sauerstoff. I don't know. I feel good. Let's put it like that. I'm fine because I found it inspiring to share about different understandings of words and of what happens to us if we are in the field, acting in the field. And I also feel it was very helpful for me to overcome the shyness to share a project that only starts to emerge in this early stage, because my training and what I got from Bernie is the direction of fearlessness. So to feel my vulnerability and my shyness, and to not really overcome it, but be with it and put my fearlessness beside. So really be with both, and to train up my fearlessness is something that I really, learning in the bearing witness retreats and in all the practice of the peacemakers. So this is something that really works well. And I want to become accountable for the universe and also for you, for each of you, in what I do, even though I fail. I want to be accountable also in that, in kind of showing my failure then, or sharing it with you. And so this is more like not, I don't feel any pressure, but more by gathering witnesses, it's more like, making the flying carpet, kind of giving it more fuel, by more people seeing it or kind of weaving their friendliness into it. And even though people doubt the project or say there are hundreds of these projects already done, you don't need to do it, never mind. So I feel supported, and it's also, I'm working with self-care, for example, in sharing my unready and unperfect ideas in spaces like this with you. This is also part why I'm with the peacemakers, because they are brothers and sisters to me, as everybody I know, but it's easier for me to be with you as brothers and sisters, even though brothers and sisters can be very unnerving. That's that. But I feel at home with you right away, and so I can share it. I can take the risk. So that's easy for me. And this is wonderful. And this is wonderful if these meetings offer this, and if I make use of it. So I'm perfectly fine, and will come along in the room, in the entrepreneurship room, entrepreneurial room, more frequently now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. So we're at our time. I'm just wondering if Joshua or Adrian, if you just want to say any parting words before we close or wrap up. Yeah, Adrian.
Yeah, very briefly. Yes, I didn't even touch on the 2 points I had for the meeting, so that tells me that there's a lot to discuss in this group. And we were today a smaller group than last time, and I think it allowed for a closer interaction. I feel now I got to know you so much better, and that's delightful. So I really appreciate that. I would like to maybe use the space that you created, Rami, on the cluster to share a couple links that relate to what we just discussed. And I wanted to ask, I think you already told, and I may forget, but can you refresh what's the privacy settings of this video? Who gets to see this video? Where does it get posted? I understand it's private for the members of the cluster, but if you could refresh it, so I'd be grateful.
Sure, I'll speak to that. So the intention is that all of the cluster meetings are by intention recorded and to be shared publicly, not just with the cluster's members, but in general. What should be in the invitation to the meetings, and if it's not there, I need to make sure that it is there, that it says that by joining the meeting, you give consent, you're okay with it being publicly shared. Okay. I do want to be flexible, and because I know that the nature of this is, we are going into vulnerable places, and, it could be that something will come up that somebody will ask, I would rather this not become public, or maybe this particular section. We could edit something out if needed. But ideally, we had about nearly 20 people who signed up to be on this call. So ideally we can share this, and I think we covered so much good ground, and I would love to share it with the greater membership. So if what I'm hearing from you, Adrian, is a great suggestion. What coming up for me is to ask for the consent, but then give the option that if somebody feels in the aftermath that they would rather something to be edited out, to give that option so people feel both safe to enter, but then to share. So I'll do that. And if there's any particular requests, Adrian, that you have of me around privacy, maybe email me, and we can take that conversation just off this call. Yeah. But thanks for bringing that up. It's an important point. Yeah. Joshua.
Just wanted to thank you guys. I mean, this was a great meeting, especially about, it's good to harness me in sometimes in these meetings because I'm fairly new at it. And I'm glad you let me talk in the beginning, and then I'm glad I got zeroed into to more of a group conscience. And I appreciate you guys talking, Adrian. I appreciate you talking about the imposter syndrome and all that stuff, and focusing on the shadow. I really am. I mean, that's great. And I just look forward to talking to you guys again.
Wonderful. Great. Everyone, thank you so much. I'm going to unmute everyone. But thanks again for your availability and your vulnerability, and sharing yourself on so many levels, and offering it to others. So let's continue this on the room, in messages or over email, and sending you lots of appreciation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Namaste.
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 You guys take care.
Take care, Josh.